In today's episode, I'll be sharing with you how law school exams are drafted by our professors, how they distribute the points and the kind of questions they are likely to ask based on different topics. I'll also be sharing with you where they get their questions, how they make their exams, and how you can use the same process to make practice exams for yourself. All of this and more coming right up! Hi, my name is Lex and welcome to Lex in Motion. In this channel, I'll be helping you build your competence, confidence, and capability in law school. Start today by hitting the subscribe button below. New episodes are posted every Friday. I have spent about 10 years in and out of law school, kapatid. Sa halos isang dekada na yan ay marami na akong nakuhang mga exam sa prelims, midterms at mga finals. May mga gabi na walang-wala ako pagdating sa recitation, dala na rin ng magkahalong pagod, puyat, gutom at sama ng loob sa mga nangyayari sa akin sa trabaho at minsan sa law school. Sa mga gabing ito, dito ako nagkakaroon ng Kodak moments, yung tipong tumayo lang ako at wala akong nasabi. Pass minsan ang tawag dito. 65 sa maraming professors dahil nakita nila ako na living thing ako sa klase nila. 50 naman kung absent ako. This is why I come to class even if I am not prepared. Mas madali kasing habulin ng 65 kesa naman sa 50. Bonus na lang na may natututunan din ako sa mga kaklase kong natatawag. May mga professors kaming mahabagin lalo na kung nasa working section ako. Lahat ng nagpass o nakakuha ng 65 ay nagkakaroon ng pagkakataong bawiin ng 65. Pero kahit magsiawit pa ang mga anghel sa langit sa iyong talino ay hindi naaabot ng higit sa 90 ang grade mo. That being said, ang aking alas ay mga exam. Nagsumikap akong pagandahin ang sulat ko para lang sipaging magbasa ang aking mga professor ng aking mga sagot. Aral akong sumagot ng exam and I have shared my method of answering law school exams in previous episodes. Itinuturing ko ring alas ang mga exam hindi lang dahil sa aking test-taking skills. Skills na gusto ko ring matutunan mo sa mga darating pang mga episodes. I'd like to think that I score well in most exams because I have a system of predicting where the exams are going to come from. Ang galing ng isang review center, reviewer or author pagdating sa bar exam ay nasusukat hindi lang sa kung sino-sino ang kanilang mga lecturer, kundi kung ilang percent ng bar exam at bar problems ang kaya nilang i-predict. Madalas akong napagbibintangang gumagamit ng leakage o sample exams dahil nga may mga bokya ako sa recitation. Sa exam lang talaga ako bumabawi. What my professors do not know is that I am able to make intelligent guesses about their exams before the exam week. What I'm about to share with you is a compilation of 10 years of experience. I did not share this with my classmates, but I'm sharing this with you right now. I will show you how to hack law school exams. Let me begin by sharing how this system works. On an individual level, professors are very difficult to predict. It's difficult to predict what a single person wants, partly because individuals also do not know what they want. When you put them together and you study them as a unit or as a group, then their behavior is much more predictable. This system started with me studying each of my professors on an individual level. I take note of the questions they give us during quizzes, the topics they ask about, and exactly how they phrase their questions. The question I am referring to here is usually the last sentence. Sa pagkahaba-habang facts ay kasimple lang ng mga tanong. The goal of every exam is to test two things. First, professors have to test your understanding of a given rule, concept, provision, or doctrine. This is the bare minimum requirement for law students. All of us are expected to read, and read. Whether we understand this or not is tested during the exam. Second, professors also have to test how well you know what you know. How well you understand what you know is measured by how you spot specific issues, how responsive you are to a problem, and how you phrase your own answers. This is where professors are able to separate students who will pass the course, those who will repeat, and those who have no future in the legal profession. Harsh kapatid, pero ito ang katotohanan para sa ating mga prof. Because professors have to measure what we know and how well we know what we know, all of their questions have to come somewhere. All law school questions start with a rule, concept, provision, or doctrine. Aapat lang yan. Aapat lang ang pinanggagalingan ng lahat ng mga tanong ng mga professors. The way they draft their questions is by glancing over their syllabus, selecting a rule, concept, provision, or doctrine. Mula sa apat na yan ay iisip sila ng facts and circumstances that will expose your understanding of the rule, concept, provision, or doctrine. Halimbawa, sa ilalim ng Article 2 ng Family Code, no marriage shall be valid unless these essential requisites are present. 1, 2, consent freely given in the presence of the solemnizing officer. Mula sa paragraph 2 ng Article 2 of the Family Code, there are certain concepts here that can be the source of the question. Pwede niyang itanong ang konsepto ng consent o ang rule requiring the presence o kung sino-sino ang pwedeng maging solemnizing officer. Assume natin kapatid ang napili niya ay yung element ng presence. Malilikot ang isip ng mga professor lalo na kung medyo bata dahil in a way they want to prove how clever they are or how they can lord it over you. Ikaw na first year, first semester sa law school at sila na halos dekada na sa practice. Mula sa konsepto ng presence at dahil na rin sa context ng present pandemic, maaari siyang bumuo ng facts na kung si X at si Y ay kinasal ng kanilang minister pero ang kasalan na ito ay ginawa gamit ang Google Meet, Zoom o FaceTime. Valid ba ang kanilang kasal? In other words, valid ba ang kasalan kung ito ay naganap via streaming or video conferencing? Often, questions are not as simple as that. Professors have the tendency to compound the problem by inserting other rules, concepts, provisions, or doctrines. Masyadong basic yung tanong na yan and this is where compounding comes into play. Compounding is the combination of two or more rules, concepts, provisions, or doctrines in a single problem. When this happens, your professor is testing you based on both rules, concepts, provisions, or doctrines. Do not, and I repeat, do not make the mistake of answering only one. This is the surest way for you to fail. Kailangan sagutan ng bawat sub-question na itinago ng professor mo sa mga facts. Hindi man nila ito ilagay as would your answer be the same if ... You have to be responsive even to the hidden questions. Based on our example, the simple concept of presence can be compounded by the exception laid down in Article 35, Paragraph 2 of the Family Code, which tells us that if the parties believe in good faith, that the minister had good authority to solemnize their marriage, then the marriage is valid. Heto naman kapatid ay trick question. Walang relevance ang exception na ito sa ating rule pagdating sa presence. Ito ay attempt lang ng professor mo na lituhin tayo pagdating sa Article 2. Presence ang issue at sa panic mo sa exam, maaari mong isagot na oo, valid nga kasi may exception. When in truth and in fact, the exception finds zero application, zero relevance to the question at hand. Kung gagamit ng compounding ang professor mo, he will expand the question into X and Y were married on March 31, 2020, or about 2 weeks into the declaration of the enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila. They were living together in Quezon City and the minister of their church suggested that they stop living in sin and that they should be married via Google Meet, Zoom, or FaceTime. Believing in good faith that their pastor had good authority to solemnize their marriage and to save on the costs of the venue and reception, X and Y agreed to get married via Zoom. Is their marriage valid, void, or voidable? The question can end here kapatid, but we have to anticipate that some professors will add one more layer of complexity based on the problem. Pwedeng-pwede na itanong na lang ng professor mo ay kung ano na lang ang status ng kanilang kasal. And the problem can end there. However, he can also ask you to choose among the three. Valid ba ang kasal? Void ba o voidable lang? In effect, he is also asking you to choose one of the three and to tell him why you did not choose the other two. These kinds of hypothetical problems I consider fairly dangerous, especially if you panic during the exam. Kung ikaw ay kakalma kapatid at hindi padadala sa panglilito ng iyong mga professors, you can answer these questions fairly easily. Another kind of question you will encounter in law school is when the professor starts with a rule and wants you to answer with a doctrine. Sa mga ganitong tanong kapatid, kinukuha ng professor ang facts ng isang problem at ang expected niyang sagot ay kung ano ang ruling ng Supreme Court. I have observed that these questions are common in subjects where we have to read a lot of cases. Doctrine type questions can appear in constitutional law, administrative law, torts and damages, and sometimes even in taxation, especially on the cases that weren't discussed in class. When you're asked about doctrines, make sure that the facts match exactly. Kung may material facts na binago, asahan mo na baka iba na ang sagot at binibitag ka lang ng professor mo na isagot mo nga ang doctrine. Madalas ding magkaroon ng doctrine type questions when the topics are too technical to understand even when discussed in class, gaya ng reserva truncal sa succession at ilang mga kaso sa tax remedies. Nagkakaroon din ng compounding minsan sa mga doctrines gaya ng ginawa sa amin ni Attorney Elmer Rabuya kung saan pinaghalo niya ang facts ng Silverio versus the Republic at ang kaso ni Jennifer Kagandahan. For concepts, especially Latin maxims, you can expect that your professors will ask you objective questions like define, distinguish, or explain. Bonus na itong mga maituturing at ginagamit itong tool ng mga professor para magpahaba ng exam. Minsan worth 2 points each lang pero halos isang page ang kakainin para lang makompleto ang iyong sagot. Sometimes professors will ask you about Latin terms hidden away inside a fact-based problem. Litis pendentia, res judicata, and their application within the context of forum shopping can only be answered if you know their definitions. That's very basic kapatid, and that's not what the exam is for. You will need to be able to apply these concepts to a problem. Last point kapatid bago ko iwan ang drafting ng exam questions. Professors can be very kind to us from time to time in that they will identify the sub-questions for us through small letters A, B, and C or the Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3. Again, these are tools for compounding their questions and they are also used to make the exam longer. Kadalasan sa mga subjects na medyo madali ay dinadaan na lang nila sa pahabaan. Kung kulang ang oras mo sa pagsagot, then kulang din ang magiging grade mo. Next point I would like to make is about how professors choose their questions. If there is one thing you can learn from this episode, it is this. Only a small portion of the rules, concepts, provisions, and doctrines that you will learn in law school will account for the greater portion of your results. Sometimes professors ask 80% of the points based only on 20% of the material you have discussed either in class or in recitation. However, on average, it's actually closer to 60% of the questions will come from 40% of the topics. Paano po namin malalaman alin yung 20% or 30% na dapat kaming mag-focus? The answer, kapatid, will be found in your classroom notes. Your classroom notes will hold the key in every exam. Classroom notes include the topics that your professors spend much of their time on. Minsan sasabihan pa kayo na mag-focus dito o ito ang aralin. Another source of the 30% is to ask the professor yourself. Makapalang mukha ko at tuwing last meeting namin before the exam, madalas magtanong ang BDEL ng kung ano ang coverage. Kung medyo mabait ang professor, itatanong ko sa pandinig ng lahat ng aking mga kaklase, Ma'am, kung kayo po ang may exam next week, paanong aral ang gagawin ninyo? This is a very brave question, kapatid. It comes with the risk of being marked and remembered in a bad way. Kung mabait ang professor, ibibigay niya ang pointers mismo. Kung hindi naman, isasagot lang niya yung topics na tinambayan ninyo during the prelims, midterms, or finals. Compare what your professor says with what you have already identified through your notes. Chances are magbabanggayan. Finally, you have points distribution. All of the exams you will take in law school will range from 0 to 100 points. Your raw score is typically your grade. This is the same for the bar exam. Kung maka 40 points ka out of a possible 140 ang iyong midterm grade. Expect no mercy, expect no transmutation, expect no adjustment based on the curve. During my time 10 years ago, the prototypical exam consists of 10 to 12 questions with 1 or 2 sub-questions per problem. The total was always 100 points. Meron ding 25 questions at 4 points each for a total of 100 points. Meron na rin akong exam na 4 lang ang tanong. A single question but worth 25 points per question for a total again of 100 points. Iba-iba yan kapatid, minsan may straight up essay katulad ng mga nabanggit ko kanina. Meron ding mga modified true or false with 3 sentences na explanation. Our batch was also one of the batches affected by the bar reforms instituted by Justice Abad. Kami ang batch na binabad sa multiple choice questions. Others are easy enough while others will contain the worst kind of MCQ. And that, for me, is identifying if only statement 1 is true, statement 2 is false. O baligtad naman where statement 1 is false and statement 2 is true. Or both statements are true or both statements are false. This kind of MCQ is the worst dahil lang sa ayaw maging madali ng professor ang kanyang exam. Madaling gawing mali ang isang tama o gawing kulang ang kumpleto kaya suki tayo ng true or false. Mahirap ang gumawa ng MCQ based on actual objective choices. My tip kapatid is to go back to your syllabus and identify the topics where you spent the most time on. Identify where the possible questions could come from. Let's do a concrete example. Kung saan ang inyong midterm sa Criminal Law 1 ay covered hanggang alternative circumstances under Article 15. Siguradong sigurado na ang bulto ng inyong oras ay napunta sa justifying, mitigating at aggravating circumstances. Expect that 60% of the exam will be asked from there. Expect questions on the elements of self-defense, compounded by incomplete self-defense, unlawful aggression, and notable cases like People versus Henosa. Another 10 to 15% of the exam can be asked from the stages of execution. Another 10% can be asked from conspiracy, and then another 5 to 10% will be asked on Articles 3 and 4, specifically criminal liability and impossible crimes. The rest can come from alternative circumstances, Article 2 and Article 9. The rest of your coverage like Articles 5, 7, and 10 may not be asked in your exam. Ito kapatid ay isang halimbawa kung paano mo malalaman ano ang mahalaga. Tandaan mo lang ang mga topics na tinambayan at mga topics na dinaanan lang. One final point kapatid on point distribution. 95% of all the exams you will be given in law school are broken down to 8 and 2 and 9 and 1 problems. This is what I call the Goldilocks rule of exams. Remember that the goal of every exam is to test what you know, and second, to test how well you know what you know. If a problem is too basic, tipong masasagutan ng taong nagbasa, it will not be asked. Hindi yan itinatanong kasi minimum requirements na yan. If a topic is too easy o tipong kaya mo itong unawain mag-isa, it will not be asked. This is not the point of an exam. If a topic is too difficult or too technical, chances are what will be asked will be problems lifted exactly from the doctrines of the cases. Ito ay dahil ayaw naman ng mga professor natin na parusahan ng kanilang mga sarili. Kung sobrang hirap ng tanong, manghuhula ka lang, at kung pangit pa ang sulat mo, masasayang ang oras nila kaka-check sa iyong pambobola. As I've previously mentioned, 80% or 90% of all the questions you will be asked in your exam will come from the Goldilocks zone. Not too basic but not too technical. However, by way of exception, 1 or 2 questions will come from the most difficult topics. The last 1 or 2 questions outside of the Goldilocks zone are for students to distinguish themselves. During my time in law school, sila ang mga tanong na kung aming tawagin ay tanong top-notcher. Dito ako madalas naaalala ng aking mga professor. These are the out-of-this-world problems that may or may not be part of the coverage. Here the professor is checking how you argue, how you present your answer. These are usually found in the last parts of the exam, and most students who never finish their exams will never find out about these questions. Karamihan sa mga tanong top-notcher ay walang sagot sa libro. Minsan sila ay mga problem na hindi nasagutan sa loob ng klase. Dahil wala silang sagot sa libro, sumagot ka lang ng medyo related at connected, ay may points ka na. Masapul mo sa ulo ang tanong ay garantisadong mapapansin ka na ng professor mo. Ilang beses na rin akong pinatayo sa klase para ipaliwanag kung paano ko nasagutan ang isang tanong top-notcher na wala ni isa sa aking mga kaklase ang nakasagot. Madalas akong mapahiya dahil dito kaya nagsasabi na lang ako ng "Tsamba lang po, sir." Kapag pinilit ako ng professor, I will answer with the process of how I arrived at the answer. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, hindi pumapatag ang bundok sa iyong pag-akyat. Lumalakas ka lang laban sa bundok. I think this is also true for exams in law school. The more exams you take, the better you will become at hacking the system and anticipating questions. The more quizzes and exams you take under one professor, the better you will become at profiling his or her behavior and anticipating how he or she will ask the questions. To summarize tonight's episode, number 1, all questions start from a rule, concept, provision, or doctrine. Professors pick one and then build facts around them, or take facts from cases in order to test what you know and how well you know what you know. 2, 60 to 80% of the questions will come from 30 to 40% of the topics. You can identify these using your classroom notes, pointers to review, or the topics where your professor spends most of the time of the class during the midterms or finals. 3, 80 to 90% of all the questions in all exams will come from the Goldilocks zones. Expect 1 or 2 questions which will determine the top-notchers of the class. Over the course of many years, I have used the same principles to make exams for myself. When you make exams for yourself, para kang naglalaro ng chess laban sa sarili mo. Matinding bulahan ang kailangan para matuto ka laban sa sarili mo. However, let me end by sharing that when I am able to answer my practice exams, I also use these as my last-minute tips or LMTs. Heto na lang ang hawak ko 1 hour before the exam. Kadalasan tumatama ang aking mga tanong sa mismong exam, kaya ako napagkakamalan na may sample exam. I hope you can use the same skills here for yourself. I wish you all the success in your exams. Salamat na rin kapatid kung inabot mo ang ending ng episode na to. Salamat at kahit papano ay may natutunan kang bago tungkol sa law school. If you would like to see more practical tips that will help build your capability in law school, then please type yes in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Like and share this video for Good Law School Carmind. I will see you next Friday.